Tonight, trade talks with China.
We're going to put very fair numbers down, and we're going to say, here's what this country, what we want.
The Trump administration gets ready to meet with one of China's top trade officials. Could this be the start of reaching a resolution in the ongoing trade war? We have the latest from the White House. Plus, abortion battle and renewed safety questions about the abortion pill, now making up some 60% of abortions in America. Lawmakers put pressure on the FDA to investigate. And all eyes on the Vatican as the conclave begins. The world awaits word of the next pope. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Rising tensions between two nuclear powers and a possible break in the U.S.-China trade war. Good evening, I'm Jenna Browder. And here with the White House response to it all is senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Kelly, let's start with India and Pakistan. Airstrikes from India killing dozens overnight, with Pakistan now promising retaliation. What's the White House saying tonight?
So, Jenna, first, let's look at these two countries. India and Pakistan are side by side. They're neighboring countries, but they are not neighborly towards each other. They don't like each other. They've had skirmishes in the past, and it's been very problematic. What causes a lot of tension in the region is the fact that both of these countries are nuclear armed. And there's always the fear or the speculation that when situations like this take place, it could result in one of them launching a nuclear strike on the other country. In this current dispute, however, India accuses Pakistan of backing the massacre of 26 men, mostly Hindu, in the disputed region of Kashmir. Pakistan denies having a role in that attack and condemns India's retaliation, which killed more than 26 people as well. President Trump discussed this today and discussed this matter, telling reporters in the Oval Office that he knows both leaders of the countries. And he said this.
I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop. And hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both countries very well, good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
So, Jenna, the bottom line with the President of the United States is to make sure that India and Pakistan do not escalate into a full-on war.
Yeah, another hot spot in the world is the Middle East. President Trump announcing the U.S. military will halt bombing the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Kelly, what's the administration doing now to keep the Houthi rebels from more attacks on ships sailing the Red Sea?
Look, this ceasefire between the U.S. and the Yemen and the Houthi rebels is very important. This president explained that he is confident the Houthi rebels will agree to the ceasefire that's been established and will no longer attack U.S. assets in the region along the Red Sea and even sailing vessels that are merchants through there. The president basically stated that the Houthi rebels have actually endured a punishing attack, and he told reporters this.
We do. We take their word for it. It was, we hit them very hard. They had a great capacity to withstand punishment. They took tremendous punishment. And, you could say there's a lot of bravery there. It was amazing what they took. But we honor their commitment and their word. They gave us their word that they wouldn't be shooting ships anymore, and we honor that.
And so, Jenna, we will see if they will honor the ceasefire, the Houthi rebels. And, of course, they realize that if they go against that, the United States will be standing at the ready to strike again. Jenna?
Okay. Kelly Wright at the White House. Kelly, thank you. In economic news tonight, after a long day of anticipation, the Federal Reserve has decided not to cut interest rates. Rates will remain steady at around 4.25%. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says the White House's ongoing trade war played a part in that decision.
We have an economy that, if you look through, the sort of distortions in Q1 GDP, you've still got an economy that looks like it's growing at a solid pace. The labor market appears to be solid. Inflation is running just a bit above 2%. So it's an economy that's been resilient and is in good shape.
And the Fed rate feeds into consumer debt like mortgages, auto loans, and credit cards. We should also mention Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is expected to meet with a top trade official from China this weekend. Okay, joining us now is Andrew Root. He is an assistant professor at the Regent University School of Business. Andrew, welcome. Good to see you. So inflation has dropped according to the Consumer Price Index, but there are concerns the president's tariffs could actually, create some higher prices. Does that make the Fed's job harder on a day like this when it's deciding whether or not to cut rates?
It does. It's a good question, and it's the question that the Federal Reserve Chairman opened his press conference with, that the risks for inflation and for unemployment are both up. It's a little unusual because usually you would expect if unemployment is going up, inflation risks would go down. But with tariffs, that risk has actually risen at the same time.
So, once the Fed does begin to cut rates, how long, until that really actually starts to help the economy and consumers can really start to feel that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. They did cut rates last year, and that fed through into lower mortgage rates and lower prices for your car loans, but they paused with the increase in tariffs. And so once that resolves, probably within the next month or so, and there's a little bit more certainty on tariffs, you could probably start to see the Fed lowering interest rates. And one of the things they did message today was that if unemployment does start to rise, they will err on the side of cutting rates as opposed to leaving rates the same and take the risk of higher inflation.
There's, of course, a lot of worry about the economy right now. With that said, why has the stock market, Andrew, been so strong in these last few weeks?
The stock market rebounded from a pretty difficult fall after Liberation Day, when tariffs were implemented for the first time in a big way at the beginning of April. There was some significant drops in the stock market, and we've essentially retraced about half that. That's a pretty normal technical retracement off of a low. So all the stock market's really saying now is that unemployment is at a decent level, consumers are continuing to spend, and we're willing to wait and see what happens with tariff policy. So given all that, the stock market is probably about where it should be right now, but the next step on tariffs is going to tell a lot.
Andrew, what do you make of the U.S. and China meeting to talk about trade? Does this signal China's economy is really struggling?
Absolutely. The 145% tariff between the U.S. and China essentially is an embargo. There was a huge pull forward in shipments from China to the U.S. because of the threat of tariffs. So there's a significant amount of inventory of Chinese goods in the U.S. But once that gets worked off, the Chinese economy is really going to suffer. And so they are in a position where they would really like to get some sort of a workable deal with the U.S.
Yeah, we had a guest on last night who was saying China's talking tough, but they're actually already starting to retreat. All right, Andrew Root, we will leave it there. Andrew Root with Regent University, thank you. Well, there are long lines at DMVs across the country this week as people hurry to get a so-called real ID. The updated IDs have enhanced security features and will be required for domestic flights starting today. If you don't have a real ID, you'll still be able to fly for now, but to expect additional security checks. You could also use your passport if you have one of those. The Real ID Act was passed by Congress back in 2005 and is finally going into effect after several delays. Lawmakers are putting pressure on the Food and Drug Administration to examine safety questions about the so-called abortion pill. That's because a new study reveals women taking Mifepristone could risk extreme danger. Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London has more.
Mifepristone is responsible for more than 60% of U.S. abortions. Republican Senator Josh Hawley is calling out new FDA Commissioner Marty Makary for being slow to take action against it because new information shows the rate of serious health risk is 22 times greater than the numbers reflected on Mifepristone's FDA-approved label.
I have no plans to take action on Mifepristone.
During that same interview, Makary admits new data is coming that he hasn't studied.
Please don't take this under any circumstances.
That strong warning is from Jamie Bryan Hall, who led the Ethics and Public Policy Center study. It found more than 1 in 10 patients who take Mifepristone risk severe and sometimes fatal side effects.
Something like an infection that could lead to sepsis. It could be hemorrhaging that could require a blood transfusion.
Hall, the center's director of data analysis, adds about half of the women who experience what's called an adverse event will likely end up in the ER or hospitalized overnight.
It's very risky for her in these situations to be doing this without proper care from a physician throughout the process.
The extra attention paid to this report could be because of its huge database of health insurance claims. It includes nearly 900,000 prescribed abortions from 2017 to 2023. That's a stark contrast to the FDA-approved label, which relies on data from about 31,000 claims, showing less than 0.5% severe reactions, compared to the nearly 11% reported by the EPPC.
I didn't expect it to be that we were going to find 22 times as many serious adverse events as the FDA did.
Is the FDA failing to protect women from significant harms?
Yes, the FDA has failed miserably in its responsibility to protect women from the risks of this pill.
These numbers have members from both sides of Capitol Hill joining the center in the call for action.
We're asking the FDA at a minimum to reinstate the protocols that were in place when Mifepristone was approved in 2000 and to look at our data very closely.
Mifepristone's producer Danko points out that more than 5 million U.S. women have taken the drug since the Clinton administration approved it almost 25 years ago. Back then, however, patients had to take the 2-pill regimen from a doctor's office, followed by 3 checkup appointments. Safeguards Hall says have loosened, especially during the previous Obama and Biden administrations.
Now it's actually possible for a woman to go online or someone to go online on her behalf, fill out a little questionnaire basically claiming that she's healthy and that her pregnancy's not too far along, get the pills sent to her in the mail.
Hall and other critics believe Mifepristone should be removed from pharmacy shelves. As lawmakers call for a full FDA review of EPPC's study, I reached out to the FDA director for comment. His spokesperson referred me to Macary's previous statement, which reads in part, "There is an ongoing set of data that is coming into the FDA on Mifepristone. So if that data suggests something or tells us that there's a real signal, we can't promise we're not going to act on that data." Michelle London, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, London. And coming up, all eyes on the Vatican. We have the latest from Rome as the world awaits word of the next pope. Black smoke poured out of the Sistine Chapel chimney today, indicating that no pope was elected on the conclave's first ballot. After voting ballots are burned in a special stove, white smoke means a new pope has been chosen. So we'll look again for that tomorrow. Cardinals said they expect a short conclave. We will, of course, keep you posted. A new report from Lifeway Research shows membership numbers are down for the Southern Baptist Convention. It's a continuation of a downward trend for several years now, as members of the largest Protestant denomination in the U.S. battle infighting over sex abuse accusations and the place of women in leadership. At the same time, the SBC is reporting an increase in baptisms and attendance. Here now to discuss is national reporter from Religion News Service, Bob Smetana. Bob, welcome. Nice to see you. So what's behind this decline, Bob?
So a couple of things are behind it. Mostly it's generational replacement or generational change. So most Southern Baptists are over 50, 2/3 of them, and only 10% are under 30. So as those older Southern Baptists get older or pass away, there aren't as many young people to replace them.
You know, we mentioned the sex abuse.
So the membership goes down. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we mentioned the sex abuse accusations and also, you know, the controversy about women in leadership positions. How much is that playing into a decline? What's your read on that?
That plays a bit, but it's hard to. The math on the generational change is bigger. So we're at a time where a large number of older church-going Americans are sort of passing away, and younger Americans tend to be less religious, and so that's really the driving force. So even if Southern Baptists have done everything right, there have been no controversies, they would still see these kind of declines because of this shift in the way younger Americans see religion.
Yeah. What do you think they do from here? How can the denomination learn and grow from this? How do they reach some of those younger Christians?
So one of the things that's happened for them is they have had more, they've had more people in the pews. So sort of post-COVID, they hit a low of about 3.6 million. They're up to about 4.3 million people showing up on Sundays. They're still planning a lot of churches. They're still doing a lot of outreach. This is one reason why the Southern Baptist Convention got so big and has declined slower than other denominations is that they do a lot of outreach. They do a lot of church planning. I think it's going to be a long, slow kind of rebuild for them.
What denominations are doing better, Bob?
So the one that's growing is, well, first, non-denominational churches have become the biggest kind of church out there. So that's another part of it. People go to non-denominational churches. They're not as loyal to denominations. The Assemblies of God is doing pretty well. Assemblies of God, because they're Pentecostal, they're very multiracial. They actually do have women in leadership, but they are doing really, I think it's the multi-ethnic part for them. They're also very assertive about witnessing and things. So those two are doing well. But non-denominational, actually, Christians are sort of the largest and most growing segment of the religious landscape.
What about, you mentioned some of these more charismatic type of churches. Is that, the signs, the wonders, those kinds of things, is that drawing more people in?
Pentecostalism all over the globe. It's the big, everyone's thinking about the Pope right now. The big challenge to the Catholic Church overseas is Pentecostalism. It is the biggest, it's kind of the biggest and the least, what's the right word? Least covered part of the Christian church in America because they don't fit into the kind of voting categories. And we often do a lot of polling based on voting issues. Well, Pentecostals don't fit quite in evangelical. They don't fit in the kind of categories that we've looked at in the past.
Yeah. Where does the SBC, Bob, go from here?
Well, they're trying to get out of a long period of about 5 or 6 years of infighting. So they infought over politics, over race, over sexual abuse. They haven't been able to focus on sort of how do we rebuild because they've been fighting each other. It seems like things are settling down. So we'll see this summer. There are concerns that some of the sexual abuse reforms have stalled, and that's a big concern for folks. A couple of the big reforms haven't moved very far. Yeah. So we'll see if they can move out of this part.
Okay, Bob Satana with the Religion News Service. Thank you, Bob.
Great
Up
to be here.
Next, a book battle is brewing in one Colorado school district. Our interview with the superintendent, who says he's fighting for parents' rights. Welcome back. Today on Capitol Hill, anti-Semitism on college campuses took center stage in a House hearing.
The October 7 attacks on innocent men, women, and children were horrific. The violence perpetrated that day must be condemned without equivocation. And the targeting of Jewish students on campuses across the U.S. that followed was terrible and unacceptable.
The Cal Poly president challenged his students to be more accepting of Jewish students. Well, a battle over books is brewing in one Colorado school district. The Elizabeth School Board voted to remove 19 books it deemed inappropriate from its library shelves. Months later, the ACLU sued, asking the books be returned. A district judge agreed, ordering the books be put back on the school shelves. And now the school district is appealing. I spoke with the superintendent. In August, the Elizabeth School Board voted to remove 19 books from its school libraries, books it deemed inappropriate. Titles included The Hate You Give, 19 Minutes, and George.
It's about a character who is in 4th grade who is transitioning.
Superintendent Dan Snowberger and District Public Information Officer Jeff Mayer say this book was available to kids as young as 5 years old.
She immersed her body in the warm water and tried not to think about what was between her legs.
Before making it official, the district sought community input.
We provided a display for 25 days for families in the community to come and review them, read them, and give the board feedback. Overwhelmingly, the community said, we don't feel these books have value. and should be removed from our library.
4 months later, the ACLU sued on behalf of 2 students, the NAACP and the Authors Guild. Lawyers argued removal of the books violated students' First Amendment rights to access different information and ideas. A district judge agreed and ordered the books be returned. Now, after some legal back and forth, the books are back on school shelves, while the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals considers the case.
Part of the litigation has really been around what is the right of a school board to curate its content. We feel very strongly that the libraries in our district are part of the curriculum resources. And so our board's view and my view is that the materials contained in our library should support our curriculum. And needless to say, the books that were removed did not.
Associate Dean and Professor at Regent University School of Law, Brad Jacob, says in a situation like this, judgment calls have to be made.
There could be illegal reasons why a decision is made. If a school district says, we're not going to allow any books that show Black people, we're just going to have no books about Black people in our library. You're going to say, okay, that looks like race discrimination, looks like we've got an Equal Protection Clause challenge. But in general, the decisions about what books will be most helpful, what will most of our students gain from having on the shelf, and what is appropriate for them to read in this school, elementary, middle school, high school, those are for school authorities to make based on the input that they get from their community.
For Snowberger, it's as simple as letting parents do the parenting.
We want children to come to school with the values they have at home and go home with those values. It's not our job to change them. It's our job to teach children to read, write, do math, learn science, civics, and social studies.
And for now, the case remains in a holding pattern as the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals considers both sides. We expect the court to either make a ruling or decide to hear further arguments within the next few weeks. Okay, still ahead, a running club fit for all women. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a global women's running community is empowering women of all abilities. It's called 261 Fearless. The number comes from Kathrine Schweitzer's bib number during the 1967 Boston Marathon. She became the first woman in history to run the race. Since then, she's worked to encourage women to keep running.
If you want to lift a woman up, show her how to run. If you want her to take control of her life, give her an education.
And 261 Fearless is reaching women all over the world. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.